Welcome to Audio Drama Interviews, the only show without a pithy tagline from Audio Drama Reviews. Then again, it doesn't need one.
So I talked to Kat and Carolyn, and they say you're the plot guy and they're the character people. Tell me a little about how that collaboration works, I guess.
Oh, that's interesting. I suppose that's a good way to put it. So our process is sort of interesting. We have a decentralized writing structure, so it encourages anybody in the cast to submit scripts and collaborate on ideas and create more stories and more material that they feel they have the control over. And that gives us, more of that creative input from the whole group, which is sort of the lifeblood of this creative endeavor. It's so essential to have everybody getting an equal opportunity to put their voice in whatever way they want. So we accept script submissions from everybody in the cast. And we talked, I think, last time a little bit about how we go through the season at the beginning of each year and say, okay, these are the shows that we want to do. And those are the ones that get serialized. So they're, we're going to have 6 episodes of this show. And whoever the writer is for that is going to get to write those 6 episodes. But we do so many comedy sketches and so many variety show segments in the year that, everybody does really have an opportunity to try and get their voice in those other spaces, even if they haven't got a serial that year. Where I come in a lot of times, I do write a couple of the serials that we've had in the past. I wrote Geezer Space, which ran for 4.5 years. And that was a really fun experience and a great outlet for me. I love science fiction. So writing a science fiction romp was just an absolute delight. I also co-wrote a show called Celtica with Carolyn, who you interviewed. Carolyn and I have been great collaborators for the last few years, and so working on Celtica with her was just a delight. And we both love the mythology of the British Isles very, very deeply. So that was a really nice way to work together. But the thing that I do the most of, and that I will be continuing to do in the future of the show, is writing our host scripts. Around all of the serials and variety show shorts and all of that material is the host script. The connective tissue that holds together all of the serials and shorts and variety show bits is the host script. And the host script is the bit that I wrote most and will be writing the most in the future. And I think that might have been what they were alluding to. Every member of our team has a character that they play within those host scripts. And I write the material that connects them all together and allows them to, interact with whoever our special guest is for that month and involves their characters' backstories in the evolving nature of our more cohesive show. It's a 90-minute experience if you see everything or if you listen to the long episodes of our podcast. So that 90-minute experience includes a lot of these characters. That's a lot of fun to write and a lot of fun to prepare. And it's been the most consistently successful thing we do as part of the show, is building these long-term, long-form, character-focused arcs.
Has it ever been a criticism of you guys that ever, has anyone come to you say, hey, is this story too continuity-based? Is it too, serial-based? How does it work?
I don't know that anybody other than us has brought it up too terribly. And I think the reason for that is that we balance it. The host scripts have very little active continuity to them. It's all, one thing develops off of another, but you don't need to have seen a previous one in order to understand the one that you're watching. And as for the serials, by their nature, most serials are episodic in a continual building format, which is the whole point of serialization. So those serials do have a tendency to lean towards some sort of continuity. And we have been continually making choices to go away from that continuity because we're a variety show. And so in our format, it makes a lot of sense to do things that are immediately accessible to anybody who's just walking in, because you're going to get people who are coming for the first time, and we've been doing this for 4.5 years. And so if you have 4.5 years of continuity to catch up on, there's no amount of previously on pre-roll that will catch you up on all that. So we want to make sure that it's really accessible immediately when people first start any one of the shows. So we have been making active choices in our recent scripts and recent show pitches to pick concepts that lend themselves exclusively to that more episodic, continuity agnostic approach. But at the same time, some of our fan favorite shows have deep, deep continuity built in. And even though we do make sure that we're explaining everything, people appreciate the ability to see why a thing happened in this episode more than they wouldn't have if they hadn't seen the previous episode, if that makes sense. Like they're getting more out of it than somebody who saw it for the first time, but the person who saw it for the first time still got a lot out of it. Our fans seem to get a great amount of joy out of that level of continuity.
Sure.
So we go back and forth, I guess is the short answer on that one. We go back and forth, but it seems like, everybody likes something different, and we have managed to have a little bit of everything to satisfy all of those different tastes.
Has live show format ever conflicted with the podcast audience?
Conflicted with the podcast audience? I don't think so. Our show has the ability to be self-aware enough to pull that off. If we were doing a show where the characters didn't know they were in a show, that might be harder to do. And it certainly would be difficult to do within one of our serials. But luckily for our host characters, we have the ability to sort of play with that and tweak that nose intentionally. One of the things that we will occasionally do is there's a running gag about how whenever the characters need to go tell a secret, they walk over to a different microphone to tell that secret. And for whatever reason has just gotten into the subconscious of the show. And we call it out every time how, it works better telling a secret if you don't do it into a microphone. But of course, it's a show, so you have to do it into a microphone because it's part of the, So aside from running gags that are intentionally playing on it, I don't think we've run into any places where the live show and the podcast don't mesh. But that's because we've made a lot of conscious choices at the beginning about what this was supposed to be so that it worked intentionally as both things. There was never a point where this was a podcast and not a live show, or a live show and not a podcast. So I think that if somebody were thinking about doing something like this, it's very helpful to go in with the intention of being both things at once, as opposed to being like, oh, okay, well, we're a podcast, but we also do live shows. I've seen a lot of people who take their podcast on the road, and that's a lot of fun. Once you've got an existing fan base and they want to come see you at like a convention or something, that's really good. And I think that the difference there is that you have to have the facility to change what you do in a regular show or in a regular podcast to match the show. Whereas we have the good fortune of being able to do the exact same thing we always do and get both out of it.
How is writing for audio drama similar and different from other forms of script writing, in your opinion?
So audio drama has a couple specific conventions that you have to pay attention to that were set down in, the early days of radio and are still super, super applicable today. Things like making sure that you say people's names way, way, way more often than is natural in a normal script, so that the audience can follow who's talking. That's a huge one, and it does take some getting used to. Other things like narrating your own blocking is something you have to write into an audio drama script. I'm going to leave the room now! And then the character, is silent for a couple seconds and you get a door noise. There is no other script writing medium in which you write in the line, I'm gonna leave the room now. But in audio drama, it makes a lot of sense to have the character state the motion that they just took or the motion they're about to take, whether to explain the sound effect or to set up a sound effect that you're about to do, or to clarify that the person has left the room, or that a piece of action is happening, or the the light on the dashboard has started blinking. You have to have the characters say that in a way that is justified, because otherwise there's no way for the audience to know that physical blocking side of it. So in that way, audio drama is very different because it is very aware of the limitations of the medium, but it's also, I don't know, I feel like the beauty of audio drama is that you can do anything. You're not limited by the capabilities of special effects. You're not limited by the capabilities of the actors' physical bodies. You're not limited, nothing that would normally affect a film production affects your audio production, aside from can you get the human beings and record their voices. So it's all about good voice acting and good, motivated choices. But yeah, other than making sure that the blocking and physical area is described by the characters either in the scene or in narration, it's not terribly different. The pacing needs to be fast. I guess that's different. It helps to keep the speed up because there's not anything else for the audience to track. They can't watch the pretty pictures if they lose interest. So you have to keep them interested. So I guess that's that as well.
So when doing the live shows and that are eventually going to be in the podcast, how far in advance are those? How's that space between that? How's that work out, kind of thing? Or
so at this point, we are operating about 2 months ahead of our release schedule on average, which is a nice buffer. It's honestly maybe more buffer than we ought to have. Every once in a while, I flirt with the idea of releasing a couple just to get us a little closer to where we are currently. But it's nice. It's, it gives us a chance to process it well. It gives us a chance to, sort of let the people who came to see it live, or nowadays the people who watched the stream live, appreciate that they got to see it first. And that really means something. Like if you saw it live, you got it 2 months before anybody else. That is a huge, bonus as far as getting early access to content goes.
Peter. All right. So how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Pretty good.
Glad to hear it. We primarily do it in chronological order. So this is very specific to us, and I guess all of my answers have been very specific to the way we do things. But our show usually is broken down into 3 serials, 2 shorts, a music performance, and then the full show, which is the 90-minute one. We release the 3 serials cut out from the full episode as their own releases. And those come out every Thursday, 3 weeks in a row. And then the 4th week, on the 4th Thursday, is when you get the full episode, the 90-minute recording. And that's the first time you get the chance to hear all of the host stuff, the variety shorts, the serials, and the music all at the same time. The music is released as its own separate cut in usually the 2nd Sunday of the month. And then we have another show that we record that's about folk music from the serial Celtica, and that releases every other Sunday. So we're releasing twice a week, most weeks, for a total of somewhere in the area of 8 different releases per month. And now that we've changed formats for the live streams, we're doing entirely comedy shorts. This last one had 14 comedy shorts, 2 of which were music. So we're going to be able to release 12 of those as standard releases. So we're going to be doing like 3 every Thursday or something, as well as music every single Sunday. That's changing up our release schedule a lot. And we've even started doing extra bonus stuff on Tuesdays just to get it out there so that people can enjoy it. Because I guess the X factor in that realm of things is how quickly can you process the material. So if you're going to do a live recording, first rule is put it in clean so it comes out clean. So we thankfully had a very, very, very talented sound designer with us at the foundation of the company, Peter Carparelli. And Peter works for the Shure company. And luckily, in our early days, he insisted on getting the best equipment that we could. We were actually fortunate enough to receive a donation of 3 incredible condenser microphones from the Shure Corporation. And those are the same vocal mics that we use for the recording today. So those microphones go into a Zoom R24, which is a very intuitive and easy to use recording deck. Recommend it highly. Super, super good piece of equipment. Very reliable. You know, go from a really good microphone into a reliable recording machine. You get that recording clean out of the machine and put it into your editing software. At that point, most of the work is done because you don't have to spend extra time cleaning up fuzz. You don't have to spend extra time rebalancing everything because the recorder that we have gives us separate tracks for every mic. So I can change the levels in the audio editing software, and then it's done. I don't have to go through and like try to fiddle with things on a single track to make it all work. It's all easily fixed through that process. So if I could give one piece of advice, it would be exactly that. Put it into the machine clean, get it out clean. And whatever you need to do at the beginning of your process to make that happen is going to save you just pounds of trouble. Beyond that, you got to figure out how much time it's going to take you to take it from raw audio to production. You know, there are some podcasts out there where, you know, they're doing a Skype call and the Skype call is being recorded and then they put bumpers at the end of it and call it a day. And if that's the kind of show you want to run, then great. You can put up your show in an afternoon. No problem. If you're doing an audio drama, or something where that audio quality needs to be better for understanding, or where you're going to be doing it for a more professional project and it has to be nicer, you know, it's worth putting in the extra time to make sure everything is balanced, make sure you learn your software, make sure that the equipment is good. And that's going to take you extra time. And if you're like me and you just want to be super confident about the quality of the material that you're putting out, for me, it was never a question. There was never a point where we were going to slap this thing together and call it a day. I wanted this show because it is, you know, a variety show, because we're trying to give it that professional feel. We went through the extra trouble of, you know, making sure that the recording is clean, making sure that it comes into us and that we can edit every single piece and, you know, put it together with all of the bumpers that we created and cut it in a clean way with the editing software that we utilize. But once you figure out how long that is, then you know, okay, this is the period of production time. Then you have to ask yourself, how often do I want to release? And for me, all of the podcasts I produce, I try desperately to create multiple episodes in a batch, edit them all at once, and then I have a month of releases already in the can. And while those are coming out, we have a time to record and edit the next set. And that's, for me, that's been a really good cycle. It's not for everybody. You know, some people want to do it faster. Some people want to do it slower. Some people have too many other projects and don't have the opportunity to record and master within a month. But yeah, for me, I usually go with about 1 month lag time. And with Starlight, we've just been fortunate enough that we're producing so much content that we've ended up being, 2 months ahead at this point.
Visit audiodramareviews.com/media